I would like to thank the organizers and coordinators of this workshop. I would like also to salute all colleagues and wish everyone good health. I apologize for not participating my work online because of poor network. My contribution is virtual library of the architectural heritage, facade elements of Mosul traditional houses as a case study. All Islamic and Arabic cities are considered one of the unique human products throughout the ages due to the characteristics of their compact building and their distinctive urban fabric, which is adapting to its surrounding and achieving environmental and climatic requirements. These cities represent, by their constructions, facilities, spaces, and elements, the cultural identity of their residents and users. At the same time, many of the buildings and facilities of these historical cities suffer from the continuous urban and structural deterioration as a result of various natural factors and human activities requiring real awareness and care, whether by the local or global community, and the subsequent preventive and curative conservation actions such as registration, documentation, representation, maintenance, preservation, and reconstruction. The traditional houses of Old Mosul city have significant architectural value represented by its distinctive characteristics. Facade elements of these buildings within their constructed features located in touch with a lace indicate the building importance and identify its social inhabitants level. Nowadays, digital virtual environments become supported tool for displaying maintenance and preservation purposes, providing virtual environment that assists understanding, analyzing, and accessing to the represented architectural objects. The project aims to present guidelines and recommendations for creating the historic building information modeling for the entire architectural elements of the building in the Mosul Old City. The project also aims to present HBIM procedure for providing a virtual library for the constructed features of the facade elements of the traditional Mosul domestic buildings as the first phase by collecting, analyzing, and classifying these elements in categories. For providing a database of the library that can be included in the HBIM systems, the project was worked out through a review of knowledge frameworks related to the collection, analysis, and classification of elements within groups according to architectural details and building materials, representation in multiple dimensions, 2D, 3D, 4D, and 5D, using it to form a digital database to be used in maintenance and preservation of urban heritage, and providing a general procedure and guidelines for creating a virtual library of architectural elements for the entire buildings of Mosul Old City and its urban architectural and detailed levels. The main practical steps of the project included: conduct a set of on-site surveys to inventory, collect, and record these items, analyze the survey results, and classify them into categories and groups, three-dimensional representation of the elements with their architectural details and construction materials. To achieve the project objectives, the three related aspects in key sections of this research are studied, discussed, and utilized in order to determine the information and results required. Those are conservation and Mosul Old City and computer software of CAD, virtual reality, and HBIM. Here, the detailed work plan for the project. We can see the plan of this project. Types of conservation. In general, there are two kinds of conservation activities. Preventive conservation, all measures and actions aimed at avoiding and reducing the level of deterioration or future loss. And curative conservation, all procedures that are applied directly to the element or a group of elements aimed at strengthening its structure or stopping the current harmful processes affected by it. Preventive conservation, it is directed to prevent eventual problems. It is related to the provisions about the supposed natural aging and about the expected anomalies. The timing and the frequency of preventive and completing maintenance can be expected. While curative conservation, it is directed to correct the problems occurred. It is due to the anomalies relieved by controls, and its scheduling depends on the monitoring results. The timing of curative and corrective maintenance is related to the survey of the phenomenon to take care. Compared to traditional conservation, preventive conservation is a relatively new area. It is also considered one of the most interdisciplinary scientific fields, recalling the necessity for knowledge sharing in the material science, building science, chemistry, physics, biology, engineering, system science, and management, as well as a set of technical fields. Preventive conservation is explained by research and interventions that aim to reduce rates of degradation and reduce risks to groups and structural elements. It operates with scientific disciplines such as environment, risk management, physical forces, and the nature of materials. The aspects of preventive conservation is management of environment, risk, documenting, schedule investigation, information, regulation, human resources, and communication. What is important here is the management of information exchanging and representing. The second aspect is Mosul Old City. Mosul Old City, which is one of the oldest cities in Islamic civilization, is still suffering from a great neglect, awaiting a comprehensive strategy for reconstruction and a broad methodology in harmony with its historical importance and originality, for several reasons, including lack of societal awareness of the importance of urban heritage and cultural originality of all cities, presenting inappropriate or inefficient preparation plans for the reconstruction of the city that was destroyed by neglect firstly and worse secondly. Difficulties in assigning these works and activities to specialists and experts due to the ill-considered decisions of a number of related institutions, or as a result of interstate conflicts and personal benefits. The detailed research objectives. Accordingly, the current project is suggested to be a part of the comprehensive strategy to rebuild the traditional parts of the old city with the main objectives: providing adequate capabilities to reconstruct the severely damaged residential buildings that are difficult to recognize and imagine how they were before. In addition to targets no less important than the first, such as seeking to preserve the identity of the old city and the spirit of a place, Genius Lucy, with its traditional heritage characteristics, and providing a real opportunity for the craftsmen to continue their work and preserve these inherited skills as a kind of intangible heritage. The detailed research objectives are documentation of knowledge, formalization of information, providing common references for the inhabitant of all cities, the designer and architects in their projects, multi-dimensional representation as means of study of the historic buildings, simulation of restoration of buildings partly or completely destroyed, and data management on internet networks. Here we can see a number of unplanned attempts to rebuild part of the old city of Mosul. Here the project stage and its methodology that consists of 4 phases to create the virtual library. The theoretical framework results the visual structure of the facades of traditional houses in Mosul Old City in particular and the Islamic Arabic city in general possesses a number of qualities of which it was characterized by the existence of various visual elements and relations and the great resemblance between them as distinctive feature. All the systems which are the base of the visual structure of the facades of traditional houses was unified for the whole selected model of residential lands, despite the considerable variety of the element. The models were almost based on unified systems, and that led to a conclusion that the architecture of the old city of Mosul was not a sort of random accumulative buildings, but was based on planning and study by the Mosul's architect. For the practical stage, existing traditional building, through the documentation we can get the recording data, and then by analyzing this data we can take the syntactic characteristics, and through programming we can make the representation. Determining the case study limits depends on many factors, such as quantitative factor, the proportion of traditional residential buildings, about 12,000 housing units, the use functional type of the buildings, historical value, spatial boundaries, and the location of the study case, and time and periodical limits. Here we can see that in this diagram how we elect the case study. Details of stage of the practical parts. Survey and field documentation stage using photography, filling out questionnaires, recording side notes, and recording and documenting the main detail of the alleyways facades in the area specified for the case study. Then classification stage of the building's facades elements by analyzing the external facades of the traditional allays of Mosul Old City. The architectural facades of these buildings consist of the main exterior wall element, which represents the vertical parts separating the building from the alley. The other detailed elements of the facades are divided into 2 main groups: protruding elements and recessed elements. Based on that, the elements were divided into these groups: framing elements such as doorways, windows, and apertures; stripping elements, cornices, friezes, corners, and skirting; reinforcing structural elements for the upper floors, corbels, and arches; elements of mass protruding, shanashil, and balconies; structural element of support, horizontal and inclined supports; attached elements with the allays, just like tents, stairs, and skyline. Subsequently, a folder was created for each group, and the documentation photographs of the particular item were distributed on the group, with the possibility of repeating the same image in more than one group, as the image contained more than one detailed element. The main folders of the elements group labeled as following: doors and gates, window and opening, arches, friezes and corniche, corbels, corners, shanashil, skirting marble, supporting and tent, and finally parapet, handrail, railing, and guy line. Later Photoshop program was utilized to make the required adjustments to each image within each folder. Part of the concerned element in each image has been grouped, modifying the perspective scenes with the adjustments of the level of lighting and intensity in some cases, to be possible to distinguish the architectural details of the element under analysis. Then, by dividing the possibilities of one element into secondary groups, several folders have been created. The phase of 2-dimensional representation. At this point, AutoCAD is used to draw the details of each of the final detailed elements in a table that displays the plan's front and side elevations for each possibility. Three-dimensional representation of the element probabilities. In this stage, all elements are represented based on the information produced in the previous states in 3D models using AutoCAD and 3D Max software, with their texture material included, for creating a digital archive of the facades component of the external residential buildings in Mosul Old City. The detailed models can be used by architects, specialists, and professionals to produce related models of the original elements, which can be easily inserted into programs environment to create architectural facade that simulate the traditional allays of the historic city. The photos of the real item, gates and doors, and this is the 3D models of these doors, windows, arcs and corbels, corners, corniche, friezes, madamic, skirting. Forthcoming stages of the program include two levels. At the horizontal level, accomplish the digital archive of the internal facades of traditional residential buildings in the city. Accomplish the digital archive of plans typology of traditional residential buildings in the city. Repeat the project methodology and prior phases to realize the digital archive of all elements of the all buildings type in Mosul Old City. At the vertical level, the use of models produced in the current project phases in the formation of virtual environment 4D using virtual reality technologies and software to create virtual museums used for the purposes of conservation, maintenance, and reconstruction, and for educational and cultural purposes. The use of models produced in the current project phases in the creation of a database used in building information modeling software 5 to 7D to be used for information management purposes in the maintenance, preservation, and reconstruction and educational purposes. Creating multiple dimensional models by adding other dimensions to the 3D models, virtual museums, or augmented reality and historical building information modeling can be created using specific software. For the conclusion and recommendations, preventive conservation is all measures that prevent possible damage to the building or reduce their potential, with making every effort available to protect architectural and urban heritage through controlling of its environment or its display storage location. The primary objective of preventive conservation is to focus on practices and activities to prevent the degradation or mitigation of objects by controlling the heritage environment, focusing on groups of elements rather than individual objects, and on the overall urban fabric rather than single monument, and on avoiding interventions as much as possible instead of curative treatment that cause unexpected side damage. The relevant directories should encourage and promote the use of existing technologies to exploit the heritage resources by taking advantage of non-destructive testing techniques, creating multi-dimensional representations of urban heritage, and establishing permanent websites on the internet to exchange information to facilitate decision-making and raise the level of public awareness of the community participating. The results of the analysis of the heritage elements in Mosul Old City showed that there is a great diversity in their types and the structural and visual relations, with great homogeneity and harmony between these different elements. This demonstrates the attempt of old Mosul's architects to enrich and improve the facades of traditional alleyways through the details of architectural elements. It also explained that the multiplicity of forms of the individual element and its location in relation to the facade and its relationship with other elements indicates the deliberate and intentional construction, which is based on certain building codes and design standards that acquired from the prior planning of the facade design through the craft and inherited experience. Adopting the project methodology to study the details and relationships of other components of the constructions of Mosul city to identify and classify their design characteristics for the purpose of creating a comprehensive database for information management, maintenance, and conservation. Thanks for your attention.